Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take the Avro Vulcan on a cross-country journey from RAF Marham in Lincolnshire to RAF Valley in North Wales, and the purpose of the flight is to go over some navigation skills, navigation techniques on the Avro Vulcan. We'll be looking at TACAN, we'll be looking at ILS, we'll be looking at NDB and also DME. If we look at the route we have here, we're going to depart Marham and we're going to use we're going to navigate towards RAF Wittering, but RAF Wittering doesn't have any TACAN, so we're going to use the outbound radial TACAN 265 degrees out from Marham in towards Wittering. When we get there, we shall turn onto a heading due west, which will take us over the northern edge of Birmingham on the way into Welsh. Now, because the TACAN range doesn't stretch that far, we will lock onto the NDB beacons at East Midlands Airport, just to the north of the track, and then also Birmingham Airport just to the south. That will allow us to see at the various points along that track where we are. When we get to Welsh, which has an NDB and it has a DME, so we can get an accurate fix on Welsh, we'll be cruising at about 15,000 feet, where we'll drop down to low level, 5,000 feet there or thereabouts, as we descend into the valleys over North Wales, stopping off at the Mach Loop. We'll do a quick lap of the Mach Loop before recovering back to RAF Valley using the TACAN and ILS into runway 13, is that, I believe it is. But that's what we're going to do basically. So that's our route planned. I've done a bit of prelims in the cockpit before we get set off on the, I'll call it the HSI. It's was an Omni bearing selector, but this device down here, because we're going out on the 265 radial, I have the outer card, which is this one here, set to 265. We are on TACAN hold. I'll explain how this all works when we get going with the autopilot. So when we get going, we'll intercept the TACAN radial and we'll head out towards Birmingham and ultimately Welsh. The autopilot down here is an interesting bit of kit from the 1950s. I'll explain how that works when we get flying. So park and brake release. Let's just get off the ground. Under the toe brakes. Power up. Engine spooling up. Off the brakes. Full power. Push the stick forward. Keep the nose on the ground. Airspeed's alive. 60 knots. 100. 30. 40. Pull back gently. Rotate. Squeeze the toe brakes. Gear coming up. Okay, you can see the TACAN needle's alive. It's swinging around there. And also the course deviation bar has swung out. So because we're heading off on 265 initially, that needle with the circle on, that's our actual aircraft heading. You can see that more clearly there. So we need to switch that round to 265. So we're heading to the cloud base. Now, because the course deviation bar is a bit to the right of centre, that means we're left of track. So what I'm actually going to do is I'll take it to a little bit beyond that 265 heading. That'll allow us to fly an intercept path onto the correct track. So if we level out at that, and then come down to the autopilot, we shall switch it on, select track, and you'll find that the aircraft will now begin tracking because we're on TACAN hold. There it is there, starting to turn there now to bring us level with that. Now, altitude, I'm going to head to 15,000 feet. So because I actually haven't selected altitude hold, it's basically keeping pitch hold. So whatever pitch we've got on the aircraft, it'll maintain in the climb until I do something about that, which we will shortly. So there it is there, lining itself up on 265. coming up through 7,000 feet. Everything looking good. We're 8 miles out of Marham. The first leg is 38 nautical miles. Incidentally, once we do go out to the cruise, if there is any long periods of not much happening, I'll cut them out in the edit, but I will be putting chapters down below as well, so you can feel free to skip ahead and skip back and do various points of the flight. 9,000 feet, approaching 10,000 feet. Like I say, we're heading for 15,000 feet. We are now bang on the track there, 265, TACAN hold. You can see on the TACAN needle there, 265, outbound radial. Everything looking good. Quick look outside. Doesn't that look good? Fantastic. Okay, 4,000 feet a minute, 11,500, 13 miles out of Marham. So the next event will be levelling out. Now what I'm going to do, when we get a little past 14,000 feet, I will come back down the autopilot, I will disengage, manually level off, and then reselect altitude. So in readiness, I'm going to switch this down to altitude, but not engage it yet. That's not engaged yet. There's 14,000. So if I come down the autopilot, disengage the autopilot, pull the power back a little bit, and allow the nose to drop a little bit, or overshot 15,000 just a little bit. Trim down a little bit. 15,200. That's roughly thereabouts, isn't it? So come back down the autopilot, engage, and engage by pulling that lever up. That will select altitude hold. So now whatever we've got, which was 15,200, that's near enough. So we've got altitude hold. We're bang on track, still on our 265 radial. Still bang on there. In fact, if you look at our map here, it's a little bit cheating, but you can see our track there, it's bang on the track. I'm going to lift the power up to cruise at 300 knots. That's 5 miles per minute. And we are well on our way. Okay, this instrument up here, we're on TACAN hold. If you switch it to the left to bomb, that is what would be the VOR hold, which we will be using later on. If we're on ILS hold, we'd use localizer. Sorry, bomb is heading hold, what am I saying? Bomb would be heading hold, which we can use the heading bug there to hold. The autopilot panel, track, whatever this is set to, be it TACAN hold, localizer hold, ILS hold, heading hold, this track will follow whatever you have set on here. So that's essentially what goes on with this. Very rudimentary, it's 1950s technology, but it works kind of alright, it does the job. So we're on TACAN hold at the moment and it's doing a decent job. What it does do, however, when you get close to your beacon, if you're flying an inbound, it does get a little bit swaying left to right as it gets closer. I tend to, in that situation, disconnect it and just fly on heading bug. But we'll see how that pans out as the flight goes on. Oh, we've gone a little bit past 300 knots, I wasn't paying attention. And I've dropped my piece of paper, so head tracking is going to go crazy, so I'll turn that off. Pick up my piece of paper off the floor, which has got all my frequencies on it. Re-engage the head tracking. There we go. Sorry about that. Right, where are we? 30 miles out of Marham on the approach to Wittering. So our next event will be to turn slightly to the right to follow a heading of 271. So in readiness for that, once the aircraft stops swaying around, I'm going to switch to, first of all, switch to heading hold. So that's now going to switch to heading hold, so whatever I do with the TACAN makes no difference. And I want to change that heading to 271 when this hits 38 miles out of Marham. Now what I can do actually, now that the aircraft is level, I can disconnect track by pushing it in, that turns it off, so it'll hold that heading whilst I move, not that one, pull that little switch out, move the heading bug to 271, which is roughly there. Let's pop that back in. So now all I have to do when this hits 38 miles, which is about to, I'll come back to the autopilot, re-engage track. That yellow bar there, that's the flight director, will move a little bit to the right for the new heading. So there's 37. .38. Track hold. There's the yellow bar. Oops. There's the yellow bar. Swing out to the right to command the aircraft to pitch round, or to roll round, shall I say, to 271 degrees. Now TACAN's still live, so it'll still measure our outbound for a little bit. But we're now heading out almost due west, heading out towards the centre of Leicester and then the north edge of Birmingham. So what we can do, that East Midlands Airport frequency is 393, which I've already got set. The NDB is this instrument down here, relative bearing. It doesn't give you a heading to the NDB. What it does is it gives you a relative bearing off the nose of this aircraft. So when this gets within range, that needle will swing up. Just double check I've got 393 stuck in there. Yep, 393 is waiting. So we're in through a little bit of cloud. .6 miles out of Marham. Just waiting for this NDB beacon to come to life. 300 knots, 15,200 feet. We're holding steady with the speed and with the altitude. We're on 271 degrees heading. Everything's looking good. Not the best view in the world outside today, but it's alright. Let's have a look out the bomb view window. That's Leicester, dead ahead. So if you look on our map, actually if I spin this the correct orientation up, we're heading into Leicester. East Midlands is out to the right. It should come to life pretty soon, I would have thought. Let me just double check that frequency. Open chart for East Midlands, approach, NDB. Yeah, it's 393. Ah, it's come to life there, look. So it is around about our 2 o'clock off the nose. We don't have a range to it, unfortunately, but that gives us, if you check our map, you can see it's roughly done our 2 o'clock. So that's pretty good. So there's Leicester. There's the clouds there. So we're fairly on track. Okay, our next event will be when we have the East Midlands NDB directly off our 3 o'clock, so directly off to our right hand side. I'll switch across to the Birmingham NDB. And that will give us a reference from Birmingham Airport and therefore how far along the track we are. So as you can see, the NDB for East Midlands Airport is about to be directly off our right hand side. So what I'm going to do is switch over to the Birmingham frequency, which is 406. And the NDB beacon, as you can see, is now off to our, what's that, 10 o'clock? So somewhere over in that direction is Birmingham Airport. We may now be able to see from our, oops, wrong button, our bomb aimers window, Birmingham should be coming up just off our left hand side. Urban sprawl of Birmingham, as you can see there. Just off our nose immediately is Tamworth, and then off in that direction over here, there's Birmingham over there. So we're 77 miles out of Marham. And we're bang on track. If you have any questions about the navigation instruments within the Avro Vulcan, leave a question in the comments below and I'll take a look at them and give you some ideas for a future video on how to explain how these things operate. In fact, if there's anything else about the Vulcan you'd like to ask, please do. I'll see what I can do. There's something about these old aeroplanes. I am actually an old Air Force engineer. I spent 10 years working on Tornado F3 aircraft in the RAF. And these modern airplanes are great. I love flying the modern airplanes with computers, you know, your modern Airbuses and even your Eurofighter Typhoon and your F-35s. But there's just something about these old aeroplanes with old analog dials and just the old-fashioned way of doing things. I just like it, you know. You've got to be a little bit more on the ball with it, not just have some computer throw information at you. You've got to do a bit of thinking for yourself. What do you think? What's your favourite type of aeroplane that to fly within FS 2024 or 2020? So, looking at the NDB, relative bearing is off to our left. So if we were to look out the window now, we should see, wrong button again. There's the urban sprawl of Birmingham city centre down below. So we're bang on track. Okay, so our next event will be the approach into Welsh Pool. Okay, so with us now, just passing the northern edge of Birmingham and actually Wolverhampton. We've got Telford dead ahead. I think I'm going to dial in the NDB for Welsh Pool, see if we're in range yet. It might not be, but we'll take a look. We want to put in, was it 323? That's that there. And we're not yet in range. The DME that I've got put in is in range. Come down to this here, that's the range indicator there, which only goes up to 20 miles, so it's swung itself round against the end stop, so it's obviously more than 20 miles, but we've got no true way of knowing exactly how far we are. However, the NDB beacon should come in at some point in the near future. We should be approaching, if you look at the map here, we're a little bit to the right of track, and that'll be wind that's pushed us off. But we're about to head over Telford, so if you take a look below, that'll be Telford down there. So we're a bit off track, but we're still not too far off track, and we're definitely heading in the right direction. Now when the Welsh Pool NDB comes alive, we can then get a true fix and we'll point ourselves directly at it. Now to imagine that it's in the not too distant future. Ah, right, NDB beacon has come alive, so we're about 5 degrees to the left of centre. So if we come down here and just move our, not that one, the heading bug 5 degrees or so off to the left, that should correct that. Now we are at 15,000 feet, and by the time we get to Welsh Pool I want to be at around 5,000 feet, so we need to lose 10,000 feet. If we descended 2,000 feet per minute, simple sums, what's that? It's going to be like 5 minutes to descend. So we're moving at 5 miles a minute at 300 knots. Oh, this is where the mental arithmetic comes in. So we'll give it a little bit longer, and then I'll show you how we descend under autopilot. I'll describe it first. We've got the autopilot panel. We've got we're on altitude hold right now, as you're aware. We have indicated airspeed hold. Now if I switch round to that, which I will very soon, the aircraft will adjust the pitch of the aircraft to maintain whatever airspeed we have selected. So it'll do its best to maintain 300 knots. If I pull the power, the only way it's got to maintain that speed is to descend. Likewise, if you want to climb, you do the opposite. So, right, the range is now ticking down. We're about, what's that, 12 miles out. So if I come down the autopilot, disconnect altitude, switch round to indicated airspeed and pull the power. Initially it has a little bump up. I've noticed it does that a few times, but then it settles into a descent. It's going to look to maintain around 300 knots. So the aircraft itself is maintaining that descent rate. It's still a little bit left off the nose, so I'm going to pull that head and bug. It's a little bit further to the left. What we want to do is get that needle bang on the 12 o'clock position. So we're descending 3,900, 300 knots there, thereabouts. Let's descend a bit quicker than that. Pull a bit more power out. I'd like to be at 5,000 by the time we get to Welsh Pool. When we get to Welsh Pool, check our map, we are switching to a heading of 306 degrees. That's going to allow us to find this lake, and then a second lake, and that takes us to the entrance of the Mach Loop. 12,000 feet. When we do get to Welsh Pool, I'll disengage the autopilot entirely until we're finished with the low level stuff. Be hand flying manually, old fashioned way. Dropping down through 10,000 feet. With 4 miles to go. Descending at 4,000 feet per minute. So I think we should do that. We should get there in time. You see the NDB beacon swinging around now because we're getting very close to it. So what I'm going to do is autopilot disengaged entirely. I'm now hand flying. When that needle gets to 0, we are at Welsh Pool. In fact, when this needle here swings around to show that we've passed it, we want a heading of 306 degrees. There or thereabouts, and that will take us into our lake. Now, when I said I wanted about 5,000 feet, that is what I initially said, but I'm looking at the clouds. I want to get below the cloud base. So I might be a little bit lower than 5,000 feet. There's 300 degrees. That's roughly where we want to be. Let's pull the nose up and let's see what we can see. So this is now effectively VFR flying. The cloud base is blocking my view a little bit, but I'm looking for a lake somewhere beneath the cloud base there. See, my heading's on 310, so roughly in the right place. I don't really want to go much lower because that's going to affect how much detail I can see overhead, but I don't want to be much higher because I'm going to be in the cloud base. A little bit more power, we're slowing it down a bit too much. Can anybody see a lake up ahead? Ah, there it is. Do you see it? Dead ahead. Lovely. Now, the thing about the Vulcan in flying low level, I don't know if anybody has experienced this, it has two, let's call them maneuverability characteristics. People often say that it maneuvers like a fighter, for a big bomber that can move like a fighter. That is true, as long as you're below 300 knots. Once you get above 300 knots, it doesn't like rolling. So I'm just below, well, I'll just prove it here for a second. If I go above 300 knots, look at the stick here. That's full deflection. It doesn't really want to move. But if I pull back, dump some speed out. Now it's going to roll a lot more freely. So for the low level stuff, I don't want to be above 300 knots. Ideally 270-ish is the sweet spot. Anyway, here's our lake. When we get to the end of this lake, we're going to turn to 330 degrees, and that's going to take us to our second lake. I've dropped it a bit too low actually, because we're not in the valleys yet. There's still some very high peaks. Off to the right at the end of the lake is where we're going to head. And we're looking for our second lake. And this lake in particular is a good one for navigating to the Mach Loop because it points directly at it. It's a long, slender, thin lake, and it points directly at the Mach Loop entrance. There's something about flying low level in a Vulcan over the tops of the Welsh mountains. It's just great, isn't it? Alright, let's get that speed out. So I think, just peeping through there, I can see the lake. So it's going to be a hard left-hand turn, so I want to be below 300 knots. There it is. So we're up and we're over. Another thing about the Vulcan, when you put it into a steep turn, putting those huge delta wings into the airflow is like putting out a huge air brake. So if you're making a hard turn, you need to apply a bit more power. And there is our lake. Now, when we get leveled up here, if you look ahead, dead ahead, you see some peaks in the distance. Them ones there, them peaks. The left-hand slope, if you look at those peaks, that's Cad West. That's the entrance to the loop. So we're bang on track. We'll do one lap of the loop, and then we'll recover to RAF Valley, using a TACAN approach and an ILS landing. Now, as you get into this area here immediately before the entrance, off to the right is an approach lane where other air traffic can be working its way in, and coming from the left is the exit of the loop, and if people want to come around and do another entrance, they're coming from the left. So looking out for traffic. It's actually a road that comes out of the exit and it basically drives back in to the entrance. But off to the right is Bournemouth, and that's where you get traffic coming in from Valley. That's the direction we're going to head out when we're finished with the loop. So we'll be looking in that direction over there. That water down there, that's Barmouth area there. And also just coming up on the left hand side now is the exit from the loop, which I'll point out in a second. That's it there. See that road down there? Feeds in there. That's the exit of the loop where we will be coming out of in a very short time. So anyway, Mach Loop head on. Speed under control. I want to be about 270 knots on the way in. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mach Loop. So the first thing we want to do is hold the right hand side, ready for our left hand turn. Speed 250, we don't get much lower than that. Now you may be thinking to yourself, who designed this view? Well, the Avro Vulcan was designed for a high level bomber. It was never designed for low level flying. It just so happens that in the 1960s, when Gary Powers got shot down his U-2, they realised that we don't have the benefit of height anymore against the Soviets. So the best way to avoid radar and surface-to-air missiles would be to come in low. So they changed the role of the Vulcan, and the V-Force entirely for that matter, to fly low level. And now we can do it, as you can see, but the view from the cockpit is dreadful. But it just adds to the challenge. Now normally I ridge roll this in the fighter up and over, but I'm not going to do it in this aeroplane. Over the top as we head down towards McKinley, which is the town at the bottom, which gives the loop its name. I'm sure I've killed that pronunciation because I can't speak very good Welsh. Now we've got a sharp turn coming up here, so I want to lose a bit of speed. And we're following the river here. Put this power back in because those big wings just rob you of that speed as we come round. And let's get low and fast. Let's get the howl going. I don't want to spend too much time in those outside views because, well, I'm very low, very fast. Now what you'll see now, I'm above 300 knots, which I'm going to maintain for a bit because there's no more tight turns for a short while. But I've got to put these turns in. There's a slight bend to the left, so I need to think about putting it in early because it's going to take time. Look at that, that's full deflection. It doesn't really want to roll. It's because it's protected by all these down here. This is your pitch field roll field computers. They don't want those huge metal air surfaces at the back of the delta wing thrust into the airflow at that speed because it'll damage it. So the airplane actually limits how much you can force those control surfaces into the airflow at high speed. So it's intentional. So let's get that speed back down now because we are going to head into some more tight turns. This is actually a kind of an early fly-by-wire system. The actuators that power the flying controls at the back, the flight surfaces, are very strong, very powerful. And if you're doing 350 knots and you push the stick full left, without the damping, it will push those surfaces into the airflow and it will cause damage. So, like I say, it limits you now. So, power off, into Bluebell. In comes the turn, in comes the power. The view is dreadful. But we're through that turn. 250 knots, it's okay. 2 more turns to make. There's a slight left hand coming up, followed by a sharp right hand, and then we're out the loop. There's the road that we saw coming out earlier. We're basically going to follow that road out. Tight turn, power up, and we are out the loop. Now if we wanted to go around again, which we're not going to today, but that's where we went in just before. And now we're heading back up to altitude, and we're going to lock onto 21 X-ray, which is the TACAN for Valley. Any second now you'll find the TACAN needle here will spring to life. Once we get enough line of sight, we'll get out the below the tops. Come on, TACAN, should have come in by now. Oh, that's because I'm a 20 X-ray. 21 X-ray, try that. Boom, there it goes. So RAF Valley is on a heading of 320. So now we're safety altitude, down the autopilot. We will altitude hold, engage. Oh, the aircraft's turner must have track in. Yeah, we did. Let's just disengage the autopilot a second. It's a little bit finicky. It does work, the autopilot, but it's a little bit temperamental. Okay. So 21 X-ray is now in. We have altitude hold in. Yeah, we do. And now let's think about recovering back to RAF Valley. So what I say it was now on 330. So if we come down here, move the heading bug to 330, engage track hold. There goes the flight director, yellow bar. There comes the turn. 33 miles out from Valley. I love those views. That's chase plane, by the way. I don't know if has anybody got chase plane. I just bought it last weekend. I'm really enjoying it actually. So rolling out at 3.3, so we're pointing pretty much directly at RAF Valley, even though it's 31 miles away. I'm going to bring some speed back to sort of 250 knots, give us some time to start configuring ourselves for our approach and landing. Now the runway at Valley is 108.55. One 108.55, 20 on X-ray, right, that's all good. Now, this is where the Omni bearing selector thing down the bottom here is really awkward. So now the aircraft's level, I'm going to disengage track hold because I'm going to set the outer card to the runway heading, which is 13. It takes ages to do this. I'd like them to do an update from Just Flight. The guys at Just Flight do an update that makes this move quicker. Unless, of course, this is true to life, what it was actually like. So I want to put this on the actual heading of the runway. Now, if we come down to the map, I'm just going to check. Open charts. Yeah, runway 13 is what we want. So we're 24 miles out let's think about getting down, because we're going to have to go past and then swing in to the opposite direction. So we want to be kind of pattern altitude height, which is 1,000 feet. So, like we did before, disengage auto altitude hold, switch to indicated airspeed hold, pull the power. Not as aggressively as we did last time, a gentle descent because we've got a bit of time on our hands. If I switch, sorry, what's our, yeah, track hold is deselected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this to localizer, and that is ILS hold. You can see the ILS. So when it comes to the ILS, we'll get our information up on there. So it's looking good. Dropping down to 4,000 feet, 19 miles out. TACAN showing 335 degrees, and our heading is not quite 335, so we need to turn a little bit to the right. Can't do that because we've got the autopilot on, haven't we? So what we'll do is use the heading bug. Remember, the awkwardness of this one means it's not as a normal compass is, so we'll switch around to about 335, switch back to, actually, you know what, I'm just going to fly it manually because we're getting very close. So disengage the autopilot, I'm going to power up and hold around about 3,000 feet for a bit longer. Now the way the ILS works in the Vulcan is that yellow horizontal bar there, that's the glide slope, and down below the lateral deviation bar works kind of standard. There's nothing unfamiliar about that. So between the two instruments you'll get the ILS. Now the thing about the ILS into Valley for runway 13, it's an offset localizer. It doesn't bring you in a straight line because there's a bit of high ground to avoid. So it becomes apparent once we get there. I'll explain how it's working. Right, there's 3,000 feet, 250 knots, 11 miles out. I'm actually going to descend a little bit to get below this cloud base. Ah, lovely. Good view there of roughly where RAF Valley is. Okay, there it is there. There's RAF Valley right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fly heading parallel with the incoming runway that we want, which essentially just get that heading indicator just basically pointing to 6 o'clock because I've adjusted the outer card to runway heading. (2,500 feet). Keep it coming down. There's Valley right over there. Fuel is good, plenty of fuel. $1,900 feet. Start slowing down towards 200 knots. Now this card on the left hand side tells me my approach speeds based on the fuel. These are updated live, so it's 155 pattern speed, 135 approach, 125. I like to add 5 for safety margin, so we'll call that 140, 130 for approach and threshold. 140, 130. So I've got a bit of speed to lose, so as the speed comes off, trim up. I'm going to turn in slightly before the end of that headland. $200 knots. Looking good, nice and balanced. The ILS range indicator just above the stick there is 2 miles. In fact, TACAN is telling you it's 2 miles as well, so we'll move out about 5 miles or so. We'll give ourselves about a 5 mile run in. This is the high ground there on the headland, which is the reason for the offset localizer. You sort of come in on an angle and then just straighten up at the last moment. $1,600 feet, don't want to get much lower than that at the moment. 4 miles. There's the high ground there. Okay, 5 miles, so we'll make our turn. Now remember, chuck that wing into the airflow, put the power back in, because it leads the speed right off. You see I've got the aircraft symbol right on the glide slope. Localizer switched off to the right a little bit there, so that's alright. I'm correct for that. Got this nice clear day, we might not actually need the localizer because we should have a nice view of the runway. And there it is there. I've overcooked that slightly, I wasn't paying attention. Okay, time to get that speed off. That was a bit of a sloppy rollout. I wasn't paying attention. I was looking too much at my instruments, the glide slope. Okay, runway dead ahead. Speed coming back. As the speed comes back, trim the nose up. Gears coming down. Medium drag spoilers. So it's 140 approach, 130 threshold, 160 coming back, trim up. There's the 140. Full drag spoilers, a little bit of extra power to compensate. There's 130, looking good. 130, hold that there. Bang on the glide slope. Idle. Do some nice aero braking by keeping the nose off for as long as possible. There's touchdown. Keep that nose off. Oop, I think I bounced there a little bit. Keep that nose off. There's a car crossing the runway. And we're down. Brakes on. Well, if you're still watching, thank you very much for watching the video to the end. I hope you got some value from it. Any questions about any of the navigation techniques that I did? I know it was a bit sloppy in places, but you know, we're getting there, aren't we? Leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'll seek to answer any questions that I get. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Now it's just a case of taxiing in to the stand at RAF Valley. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye for now.